And we are all present without any Zoomers except Jim Monteleone, board member, is excused. Welcome, everybody, to the June 26, 2024 meeting of the Freeport Project Review Board. We have two agenda items tonight. Tim Gooch Senior Housing Project off Varney Road. We just had a site walk there. We'll talk about that in a second. And the second item before us is the 170 Main Street, which is a design review certificate, and there are no public hearings scheduled tonight, although we will ask folks if they have any input they wish to share. Information exchange, Caroline?
Sure. So, like you said, the item for Cedar Haven Family Campground is tabled tonight. Expect them to be back next month. They had a list of things they needed to fix for engineering and a couple other things, so they'd asked just to be tabled to resolve those. For topics reviewed by the planning board, they just reviewed and recommended some zoning amendments for lots that are in multiple zoning districts, one of which includes RP2, to be able to include the lot area and road frontage in determining those land use requirements. They also talked about an applicant-driven agenda item for some amendments to our recently approved cannabis establishment regulations. There's another state license type that an applicant wants us to allow, kind of behind the scenes of the existing two uses, so they'll be considering that. Item 2, design review ordinance update. We did interview and sign a contract with North Star Planning. They are working on the update. I got an email today that they've gotten through the initial land use analysis portion, and staff will be meeting with them the second week in July when Brett is back from vacation. And update on the Freeport Comprehensive Plan. We had a great first community workshop. We had about 100 people turn out for our vision and data workshop, which we're happy with. We did decide to extend the survey timeline. The survey was supposed to close on Sunday. Now we're keeping the survey open through June 15th. If you haven't taken the survey, there's paper copies out in the hallway, or you can go to www.futurefreeport.com. It takes about 5 minutes. It's super short. They just want people's opinions on different things in Freeport, like housing, rate of growth, favorite place, population. We're going to use those results to create the vision statement, and I think right now we're at like 330 responses, which is pretty good, but we want to extend it a little bit to see if we can get more. It's also posted on the town's social media page on Facebook if you want to look for it there. Item number 4 would be review of a temporary activity permit for board concurrence. This is something we talked about last month. You had a couple of them. In the case of this one, L.O. Bean has presented an application to the code officer for a temporary activity permit. As you know, the code officer can review the standards. If he feels like it complies, he can issue the permit for 21 days. If they want a permit for longer than that, they have to come to the project review board for concurrence. I think there's always been a little bit of a question as to what concurrence is. We've always kind of treated it as a straw poll under info exchange, not really as a full-blown agenda item, but the board did have some questions. In this case, they're looking to put a very large tent in an existing parking lot for 20 months. The board had some questions on concurrence and temporary, so we did get some legal guidance, and you had a memo in your packet kind of clarifying that. I did put a blown-up copy of the permit application that they submitted to Nick in your packet. Some of the questions that you had were about parking requirements. That was in there as part of it, so hopefully blown up, you got to review that. There were also some questions about the site and the existing vehicular and pedestrian circulation, so the site plan was there for that. Even though it's temporary for 20 months, they would still get a building permit from the code office. That process wouldn't start until the board concurred. If they did, Nick issues the permit, and then they'll apply for a building permit and be reviewed for codes. Copy of the permit was in your submission. Nick Adams is here tonight if you guys had questions specifically related to his review in issuing it. Otherwise, would just be looking to treat it like a standard temporary activity. Is it something the board concurs on or not? Happy to answer questions.
I have a quick question. Based on the letter that came in from the town attorney, is there something that we can actually do to say, do this, or it would be better Or are we just here looking at it? I mean, is there a thing we can do, really?
So the code officer initially reviews it under the 4 standards in the ordinance. In this case, he felt like it was met, so he issued it for 21 days. It's not like a typical site plan with a full submission where you add conditions. I think if you have a question you need clarified, you could ask Nick. Someone from LO Bean is here, but you can't go, it's not something we really go, we've never gone into making suggestions on the temporary activities that have come to you for concurrence.
So concurrence is really yes or nothing.
Yeah,
I mean,
under
it
those
seems that
4
way to me.
standards.
It took our lawyer 2.5 pages to say, yeah, wait, it's yes or
I
nothing.
just want to.
Yeah, and really temporary is something that's not permanent because the ordinance doesn't define it. And Jim did make a suggestion that we look under another section to see if it fell under like temporary structures for construction, but she also agreed with our previous opinions that it doesn't really fall under it. This is, like any of these, all these temporary activities are unique in some way, and so really this is the best place for it to come under.
I know there was at least one question that came up. I think Todd brought it up about, safety and having it all pinned down and, so it doesn't, if we had one of these storms, it doesn't just pick up and go. So is that
That would be addressed. So if this gets approved, they would then apply to Nick's office for a building permit. He could tell you what he does as part of the code review. He is here if you want questions, but that would come after this.
So right now, it's not anything that we've seen addressed until later?
No, because like even for any structure that comes to you, that really doesn't get addressed until they go through the building permit process.
Okay.
So how does it go from 21 days to 20 months? The magnitude is just so much different.
Yeah, the ordinance doesn't define what temporary is. I think if it's something, we've seen them for all sorts of things. I think the most we really have seen them in the past is a year. We had one person that kept coming for 6 months and then finally stopped. In this case, the applicant wanted to be transparent of how long they needed this due to how long the flagship store is shut. I think, we have to review it under the standards in place. And because we don't define temporary, we go to the dictionary definition, which is basically not permanent, or however Amy defined it. I think, I would say like in this case, we have to treat this under today's standards, but if it's something I think the board has concerns about either for this or another application and feels like we should maybe look at the timing on these, it's something maybe we should refer to the planning board to look at separately.
I think I think that would be appropriate to do that. And I think that it seems like there are, occasionally, not a lot, not frequently, but occasionally there are items that come up like this that I think we're, perplexed, flummoxed on. And is there a parking lot for these things that do get back to the planning board? Or how does that work? Do we have to make a formal recommendation that the planning board should look into it? Or is this something that you are taking back?
We don't really have a process because it hasn't come up that much. I think something we could do maybe next month if you guys want to do it, want to consider that. Let's talk about it and see what you as a board feel is appropriate. And then I'd write a memo kind of on your behalf. Hey, part of you, we're seeing more and more of these temporary activity permits, variety of things. Questions come up about the timing. The planning board recommends you look at amending this in considering a time limit of, whatever number of months. But I think it'd be fair to take it up as a separate conversation so you guys can give some clear directive. And I think an email or memo would be fine.
Yeah, I think we've had a
Yeah,
number
to
of
the planning
things over the, past couple of years that have come up like this. So this is one of them that, that it'd be
we
good
could
to
talk
send back.
about other things too.
I think sign standards was another thing that came up a year or two ago, that sort of thing.
Okay, so let me, as a side note, and then we'll get back on track.
Yes, sorry.
I'll put a note to add that to the July agenda conversation on items to send to the planning board for consideration.
Just in general, it seems like it's water under the bridge, but lessons learned, looking at a big comprehensive project like this, it would have been good to include this, that this was a step that was going to take place, that they were going to need to relocate into a temporary facility, so we could consider that in the whole, so.
Yeah, I do think that, it's something they've been looking at all different options. This wasn't their only option. They looked really hard, and it's related but separate and not part of the PRB agenda item purview. So I don't know that they would have had all the details when they originally came in, to be honest with you, but.
But we did press them on that, Fred. We did ask, guys, how does this fit into the overall process? We started that, and they didn't mention this, and we didn't think to ask.
We didn't ask
Okay,
either, I mean-
but that's not our responsibility to ask, because we're not managing the project.
Right.
So we did ask, and they didn't identify this or identify that they were going to be, that they were going to have a temporary relocation to something.
Yeah.
And again, I think that's kind of falls short on them again. And I hope they hear this, because, next projects, it's going to be perhaps a little bit more difficult, because we're going to want to have a little bit more information up front. And
Well, again, this is coming in under a different thing, and the PRB is not the first stop. So it is a fine balance. I mean, we
Yeah.
can't have people bring stuff. We don't have people bring stuff to you that really doesn't go to you. So, it's a unique situation.
My bet is when we get this done, it'll be something that ends up in Nick's office and stops in Nick's office. Maybe you'll have clarification, Nick, on a temporary only goes to X months or something like that. But is there any other discussion before we move into the items that we?
Yes.
I guess if we're meant to concur on this, my main issue is just like truth about the duration. Like, because it sounded like from the last discussion that they could just keep extending.
Yeah, so I did talk to the applicant about this, about the 20 months, and we talked about coming in for a shorter duration, and they strongly, they don't want a tent, they want their retail store open. And so we did have that conversation, and they feel like it's a firm 20 months, and if it wasn't, whatever standards are in place at that time, they could still come back, but they felt 20 months really fully covered what they need for this.
And then I am going to go back to something that you started off with, and that's the comprehensive plan and the consultants, and you said waiting for Brett to come back from vacation. Maybe you could just address, what is Brett today?
So let's finish number
Is that-
4, if there's concurrence around the temporary activity permit, and then I'll be happy to give
Okay,
you an
sorry, I thought
update
we were-
on some
okay.
changes at
Okay.
Town Hall. So really, at this point, we just need to know for that temporary activity permit for the tent for 20 months, if there's concurrence from the board for Nick to go ahead and issue
What if
that permit.
there's not? What's the negative side of that question?
Well, I think if you don't concur, would want to know, what standard 1 through 4 do you really object to, what you don't think they're going to meet. We haven't had a board not concur with the code officer's, initial 21 days decision in the past, so we'd have to cross that bridge if we came to it.
Is concurrence a vote, a wink, a nod of
We've
the head?
usually just kind of done a straw poll. Yeah.
You want to do, I thought we weren't going to.
We've just straw polled in the past, or
Okay.
you can, if anyone has objections, they
Okay.
can note them.
Anyone have any objections to going along with the way Nick's handling this in a manner that's consistent with our town attorney? Okay.
Okay, so we hear concurrence. Thanks,
Yeah.
Nick, for coming, even though they
Thanks,
didn't have
Nick.
questions for you.
Okay, now,
Okay, so you may jump back.
no, I have, from the site walk, I have tick number 4 and tick number 5 I got to get rid of.
Okay. Okay.
So I'm still in the lead,
You could
though.
have excused yourself.
Just now.
Okay, so Ford will get another cookie.
This is a scratch.
Oh, that's what they're for.
I thought he was the most tick-proof of all of us out there. He was kind of-
While we're waiting for Ford, I'll give you guys a side note that I just wanted to make people aware. In case you haven't seen it, I'm good right now. I'm not beating Ford. FYI, not related to PRB duties, but Main Street and Freeport will be closed on Friday because the Great Race is coming through Freeport. It'll be hard closure from 1 to 7. You'll start seeing closure barriers go out at 5 a.m., but we'll start putting the closure in place noon on Friday. Should be
where?
fully cleaned up.
Where to where?
Just past Howard Place. So we'll have police officers here detouring down Depot, kind of following the signs to the parking and the interstate. And then the northerly portion will be just south of School and Elm Streets. So there will be some detours and traffic disruptions.
Now I feel like they're all over me. And FYI, possibly, I think, I'm trying to figure this out. You were the first one walking through the path, so you probably picked up more ticks than the rest of us.
Thank you, thank you.
And now that you needed to know that.
Did you find them
Okay,
on-
thank you, everybody, sorry.
So hopping to Todd's question now. So we do have some changes going on at Town Hall, which I should have put an update. I'll make sure I put an update for July. Effective July 1, I will be moving into an assistant town manager role. We have advertised for a town planner. We're still accepting applications. We hope to start reviewing them next week. We do have some that we have received, but that information's on the website. If you know anyone that wants to apply, please share that. We will be looking for someone with a good level of municipal experience so they can come give some oversight to the planning board, some help with some of the ongoing projects and staff PRB. As part of the changes at Town Hall, Brett Richardson of FEDC will be the new Director of Development. He'll be moving into the Planning and Codes Department and overseeing the Planning Department, the town planner and assistant town planner, and overseeing the code enforcement, which we actually have 2 code officers now, Nick, and we have Alex, if you haven't met Alex, and we have an administrative assistant. The other change in planning is that our sustainability coordinator left. We have a shared sustainability coordinator that we share with Yarmouth. So we're going to also advertise for that position. We are hoping to share with Yarmouth for another year. They'll be taking on slightly different duties or additional duties, but they'll be functioning out of the manager's office. So that's a summary of the changes at Town Hall. And I'll make sure I give you an update next month because we might have
Can we
done
get
some
an org
interviews.
chart while you do it? You know,
I do not have an org chart. The manager's not here, but if you look in the GFOA budget, there's usually an org chart, but it probably doesn't match that right now.
Of the ones you mentioned in the planning department, is one of them you? Is that, I mean, replacing you? Are
The
you
town
still-
planner would be replacing me, so I will be filling that role until such time that we
I
find an individual. So I think
So Brett coming in
probably
is
you'll
not-
still see me all summer. Brett will have a town planner under him. He won't be staffing PRB, although with this setup, we do think that you'll see more of a presence of the development director at project review board meetings as they assist in different projects, and he'll probably come talk about them and how they relate to different things in town. And then you'll have the town planner who will remain the neutral staff person to the project review board.
So you'll be at the other end.
I'll be at the other end, same email, same phone number.
Good.
congratulations and
Thank you.
probably our loss.
You probably have me all summer, so. All right, so for item 2, Sharon's computer died. She had to get a new one, so we don't have minutes, so you'll have that next month.
Understood. Not your fault, Sharon. So the first item of business for us, for action items, is Tim Gooch Senior Housing, subdivision review and site plan review. They appeared for a first description at our last meeting. We had a site walk this afternoon with 15 people present, their team, our team, and some neighbors. And Caroline, can you give us some background?
Sure, so I'll give you a really short summary. The summary is there's only been one change since the last meeting, which Jim talked about. They did have to shift the driveway entrance a little bit and the retention pond to avoid some wetlands. So that change does now require a retaining wall and area of fence. Otherwise, the plan has remained unchanged, but Jim can walk you through those changes.
Oh, we ready to go? Sorry about that, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Jim Coffin, representing Freeport Housing Trust with Matt Peters and Tim Gooch here. Thanks for everyone coming to the tick-filled walk around the park. That was quite thrilling. I'm going to take this microphone, I think. There we go. Can you hear me all right? I don't know if I've showed you this or not. I just thought it'd be interesting to see. This is the entire parcel. Of course, the project's up in here. This is the side that we're not developing at all. It's in the residential zone, and this is the commercial. You see 3 easements, 1, 2, and 3. We had an NET NET, and this is the sewer district easement. There's 3 manholes on the sewer district easement, and we're connecting into the middle one, if you will. That is not the plan I wanted. This is our site plan. So, as Caroline explained, to go through Misha, we have to have 0 wetland impact. So we had to kind of move things around. The pond used to be down here, and it was impacting this wetland, as was the road coming in. So now the pond's kind of like a, I don't know what kind of shape that is. It's almost a rectangle with something coming off from it, but maybe a jug. So there's a retaining wall now from here all the way to here, and then there's a smaller retaining wall from here to here. And the reason this wall's here is so we don't get into this wetland here. And this is due to the pond moving up here and staying out of these 2 pieces. We are also putting a fence around the entire pond. This section of retaining wall as well as this, what we'll do there is we'll have either 8 by 8 post, if you will, which comes up about this high. It's a nice looking, it's a PT post, and it's brownish in color, like 8 feet on center with bolts going through the middle of it. And then after that, we fence, like I said, all the way around here. So no one can get access to that pond. I mean, they could if they wanted to jump a fence and do it that way. But those are the big changes that we've made. The other thing we've done, we went out and popped the sewer manholes. We found out that the entire sewer line's anywhere from 10 to 12 feet deep. We're coming in out of the building right into this manhole. And as I kind of mentioned to some of you, we have a drop inlet into that. It's so deep. I spoke with Len from the sewer district, and I think he's here tonight. Hi, Len. Len wants a drop, if you will, do like kind of a 90 when you come in, so we don't have to bore in all the way at the bottom of the structure. Does that make sense to everyone? This is our utility plan, shows the stormwater features. Once again, this is an urban impaired stream. We're using an underdrain soil filter. This has a filter beneath it with crushed stone and pipes beneath that. It not only cleanses the water, but also stores water. So it meets the town of Freeport's land use ordinance for storage, as well as DEP's qualitative ordinance. Power, water, both come in right here. We're going to set a pole and go underground. Water comes in here to the back of the building. We'll have a transformer as well over here. And we also have CWS and Keegan Carmichael's here tonight. He can help describe the building and any particulars you want to hear about the building. One more thing I need to talk about is the road or the driveway coming in. And as I mentioned on the site walk, the driveway dictates the building elevation because you can only have such a slope, if you will, coming in off the street. We go 3%. And then I think we go up 10% for a short section. Then the parking lot itself is a cross slope of 1%. Basins, everything gets into here. I think the next question that needs to be answered, who's going to review the stormwater permit? Because I don't know what the story is with the town engineer right now, if we have one, or maybe Caroline can fill us in on that, help me out.
This is peer review.
Yes, so if you need a Chapter 500 stormwater permit, our peer reviewer, Goral Palmer, can be
Okay.
issuing those.
Is there a contact over there, or just?
Yep, I'll be happy to connect you with Will Haskell. He's been doing the reviews.
That's
for
awesome.
us.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
So we had a couple letters also. I'd like to just go over those real quickly. One is from, excuse me.
You guys had 2 letters of public comment, and then you had, well, a third was a letter from the sewer district. There was one in your packet, and then they submitted a revision, which you can talk about the difference.
Correct.
They're concerned.
So Kay Sullivan wrote a letter, and she had a few items. One of them was Concord Gully Stream and how it's urban impaired and how we're going to protect that. I've mentioned to you how we're cleansing the water going in there. DEP's threshold in urban impaired is 20,000 instead of the acre. That's really the only significant difference that gets you your permit to DEP. You have less impervious area before you need a permit. She also mentioned the entrance was located very close to the stream. Our entrance is at least 90 feet from the stream. The only thing that's going to require a permit by rule there is that retaining wall, not the actual, the retaining wall is about 70 feet from the stream. So we're going to need a PBR on that, and we know that. We'll submit that. but the entrance by no means would need a permit, if you will. Traffic, we had a traffic study by Diane Morbido, and I think on page 8 of the report, it states that the proposed 42-unit dwelling are expected to generate 9 to 13 one-way trip in the peak hours. That's equivalent at that Varney Road, Lower Main Street intersection to a level of service of A, which is the best you can have. She has no capacity constraints, and the same level of service is expected after the full build-out. And Kay also mentioned the housing development not having enough green space. So what we have here, we have significant green space over in here with picnic tables as well as community gardens here, and there's a large area out back of at least 20 feet in width that's also a nice lawn area, if you will. We feel that we've made an impact with these amenities, if you will, and we've addressed that situation. The other letter I just need to talk about is Rod, I can't pronounce his last name, it's Rieger? Regier, I'm sorry. He also mentioned the water quality, which I addressed. He brought up the multi-use trail corridor, which I'm going to let someone smarter than me, like Tim or Matt, talk about that. And then the sewer easement with how this project's going to affect that pipe that's buried 12 feet in the ground. We'll have no problem with that. We don't have a full foundation there. We have a slab on grade with frost walls. The thing's 12 feet deep. If you take the 45-degree angle from the bottom of the footer, it wouldn't even hit the pipe. That being said, we're going to be more than comfortable. We'll have a geotech report addressing that as well. Egan, I'd like you to just explain your building, if you don't mind.
Grab my little cheat sheet here. Hello, Keegan Carmichael from CWS Architects. So our building is a 3-story, roughly 1,200 square feet per floor. We're right at the max for 35 feet from the average grade, because that's measured from the 4 corners, then you go out 20 feet. Basically, it's going to be a highly efficient, as good as we can do for it surpasses energy code. It's a continuous underslab R10 insulation. The walls have dense back cellulose with 2.5 inches of zip R on the outside, so it's continuous insulation. Roughly an R38 for the walls, and we'll have an R60 in the ceiling. It's basically how we do all the passive houses nowadays. It's just we're not pursuing any certification for it. So it's going to be extremely energy efficient. Color scheme on the outside is just a forest green with a white, and then you can sort of see the little gray trim band around there. When we were on site, we were talking about addressing the side that faces Varney Street. You can sort of see it right there. We have a stair that exits there. And just trying to sort of brighten that up a little bit. We talked about doing a rough, I should say I talked with Matt about just bringing one of the canopies around to that side, sort of make it look like more of a frontage. It's just with the constraints of the site and the way we have them, the building really only fits one way. It's not like we can rotate the building. And with its orientation the way it is right now, it's almost perfectly due south for the roof to have a solar array. We will have mechanical equipment up on the roof. We'll have screening for that and everything. And then that'll have a bunch of insulation around it, and trying to make it as tight and energy efficient as possible. It's 42 units. Majority of 1 bedroom with a couple 2 beds as well. 5 dedicated accessible units. 12, we call them type A. It's for main housings standards. Those can be converted into an accessible unit, which and then 25 just type B, which is their typical unit. And if they were to actually convert the 12 type A with the accessible, we're roughly a third for accessible units in here, and 55 and older for certain income ranges, the goal for all the residents and everything. Any questions?
Flat roof all the way?
Yes. Yep. Yeah, we're sort of locked in where we are with the maximum height, because that's due to the C3 zoning, so we can only go up so far.
It's 42 dwelling units, correct? 42
Yes.
units?
42.
And they're all single bedroom?
Four are two-bedroom.
4 are two bedroom?
Yep.
Okay.
There's community. There's a community room. There's a lounge. There's on-site laundry, mechanical space, snow storage. There's a bike room. Urge the residents to use the bikes. Some do, some don't. That's on the resident. So
Elevators?
yes, there's an elevator. Just one. Yep. One standard elevator fits a stretcher, meets all main building code and everything. What we did, this is similar to a project in Augusta. We tried to, well, I shouldn't say we tried. We did the elevator core and the stairs with CLT. So the benefit of that is it just goes up, instead of doing block or shaft wall, they basically bring it in with a crane and then they just drop it all in at once. And then you have your flame spread rating. We had to put 2 layers of drywall just for the fireproof of it. The CLT itself has a flame
Sorry,
spread rating.
CLT?
Cross-laminated timber. Essentially, it's just a bunch of 2x4s glued up. It's a different version of laminate. So, but instead of doing a span, it stacks like a wall.
Is the elevator in the center of the building so it can be accessed by people on
it's,
both
you can
wings?
sort of see it right. Our main entry here, and the elevator basically stacks down the middle. It's not directly in the center. It's off by about 15 feet, but that's just due to the layout of the floor plan. Stairs on either end that they bookend the building, multiple lanes of egress. So the windows are cottage-style windows, double hung. Cottage-style means the sash is offset from the lower portion. Low E, double hung, as efficient as we can get and we can afford. So
Given the weather events that we've had and the power outages and the fact to be elevators, is there going to be a generator that can support the elevator?
the generator, we're doing an elevator? Yes, we are. Sorry, we're doing, the generator will be, it'll operate the elevator as well as the community spaces. As far as, we don't have any battery backups on site, the generator will just run basically the heat in the hallways and then the community spaces. So if everyone needs to shelter in place, they can.
Is it heat pumps?
Yes. No, sorry, not heat pumps. ERVs, similar to a heat pump, just bigger. Heat pumps are usually just single units. This does the whole building.
Okay, I have a different understanding of that, but that's beside the point.
One big unit on the roof that does everything.
So it's electric, no,
Yep, all electric. The only thing we were talking about actually having non-electric would be the domestic hot water service demand. We have to work that out with main housing. Usually in the past, they've given us a waiver. But that would just be, if we were able to do that, we would have a propane tank on site for that. That would
so what would be the waiver, to go with propane or to go with electric?
go with propane for just the domestic hot water. All the heat in the units would be all electric. We had a baseboard heating for the living rooms and all the bedrooms. And as a result of this same building that was in Civic Center, the reason we have the cottage style windows is if residents wanted to actually put in a window air conditioner, they could. But given the building's performance in Augusta, no one's really needed to. And with the central ERVs, it's basically been a standard 72 degrees inside
Sorry,
the building.
ERBs,
ERVs,
what's that mean?
energy recovery. It's the same thing as a heat pump, it's just bigger.
So, just, because I'm just trying to understand. So the ERVs, it's baseboard hot water? Is that what it is? You said baseboard.
Baseboard electric. for
It's
heating.
baseboard electric?
Yes.
So it's resistant based?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, it's all electric.
And so where's the energy recovery if it's all?
For the ventilation. So you mix the outdoor air and the incoming air coming in at once.
Okay,
So the baseboard electric is just for the heat in the units, basically in the winter.
okay.
And then the air is tempered with the outside air as it comes in.
Any other questions from the architect?
So it sounds like you're going to make adjustments to the Varney elevation,
Yes.
and you'll bring those back here for us to look at in the next meeting. Okay. I think it would be good to work on the windows that are in the stairway. They just feel, the proportion of the windows and the placement of the windows feels off in relation to the rest of the design on the main facade.
That's actually just the layout of the stair because they're at the landing, so we can't have the windows any more than 18 feet below where your foot might be, just in case your foot goes through. But we can change that. We'll go through a design review.
Okay.
I'll just remind them, this isn't in design review anymore, but it does come under section 527, which has some vague standards, but there's something about, roof lines or appearance of similar buildings. So when they make the changes, just to look at that when they bring it back to the board.
So does that mean we would get a rendering of what it would look like from Route 1?
Not necessarily. So it really has a standard about how to prevent long monotonous buildings, architectural details on front and side and edge of pitched and flat roofs. To create consistent building styles, all sides of the building should match or complement the style of building that has the greatest visibility from a public street. There's standards for metal sidings, just coordinating the building design with the landscaping plan, and a standard for overhead doors. There's a standard for blank walls, but they have openings on all of the walls. So, I mean, you won't get into the same level of detail, like window detail, the mullions, the materials, but it's more about just breaking it up.
So it would be not unreasonable, it would be within our realm to ask for a rendering from Route 1?
We've typically, I think, in C1 seen it, because
We had submitted an initial, obviously it doesn't have the detail of that will happen on Barney Road. But our concern was when we were looking at the site several months ago, where our first floor was in relation to Route 1, and we're actually about 13 feet below where it is. We planned to keep as much vegetation as possible, and where we had to cut it, we were gonna try and do like a row of trees, so therefore it only looks 2 stories instead of 3, because it seems like the scale of the garage and the brewery right next door, 1.5 to 2 stories at most. So we're trying to match that as best we can.
Right, but I think there could be concerns about, because it would be below grade from Route 1 considerably, that also what's on the roof and how visible is that going to be?
So Todd, I just want to clarify. So you have the proposed buildings in relation to the environment under 602, but building design under 527 is actually a little more specific than Route 1, because it's for proposed building facades that face or are visible from any public road, including but not limited to US Route 1 and Interstate 295, residential neighborhoods, or building on abutting properties. Then these standards apply. So I think you wouldn't really actually just be looking at it from Route 1. You'd be looking at all sides from, I think really you could see it across the street, or you could see it from the former R&D building. You'd be looking at it for that to make sure they meet these standards.
We can come up with a character study as well, as far as how we came to this design.
So following up on the visibility from Route 1, because of this, I guess, the elevation of where the ground level is, the top 42 feet high, which is where the roof line is?
35.
35?
35 is our max height.
Okay.
But the
But then
mechanical
the
unit will be above
equipment,
that,
the
yes.
utilities are above that.
Yep.
So I'm just wondering if you would be able to put in some screening along that view so that when you're looking from Route 1, or you just don't see all the equipment stuff, you might see I'm saying a fence-type screen, something that has some screening of those pieces of utility.
Yep, and we've planned for that. We haven't put it into the drawings yet. We're waiting to get past this first, but we will address that. But typically, we do have to do some type of equipment screening.
Okay, and I have one other question. When you're on a floor and you're coming in from, I guess, the center, is each apartment on one half of that floor? So there would be one on one side of the hall and one on the other?
I think I just have elevations there. No, all your stuff is elevations.
So the question will, I'm going to continue with the question while you're looking.
Okay.
So is each apartment then only having 1 or 2 windows facing the outside?
Yes, they get one in the bedroom and two in the living. It's a double-loaded corridor as you go across. It's just the most efficient way to build.
Explain that better.
Corridor
to
in the
me.
middle, units on either
hotel.
side.
Yeah, yeah. So the windows are just like two windows on the outer perimeter of the building?
Yes.
For
Yep.
each apartment. So I would hope that the airflow works well for cross ventilation.
So there's airflow within the building itself. We're actually pumping air in. That's part of how we temper the air to control the interior temperature. So they get dedicated fresh air that way, but if need be, they can actually open their windows if need be.
All right, so the airflow pumping in
Part of the
is
mechanical.
pumping into the hallway areas and the community spaces?
Into the units themselves, there's supply and demand.
Okay.
Because when you button up a building so tight, you actually have to provide interior ventilation. Otherwise, you get sick building syndrome, kind of like what happened in the late 70s.
I live with that now.
I'll chime in here. I appreciate you folks being responsive to the issues that were raised in the letters from the folks in the neighborhood. And also appreciate the fact that this is a Maine State Housing Authority project and you've got cost constraints and so forth. I think you have a nice piece of land to develop based on what we saw. And I have one issue with the project, which a couple others have raised, and I raised it at the last meeting. I shared it with Jim and Matt today, and that is the appearance of the building. It is not too costly to put some thought into this elevation that's going to be visible from Varney, and then also, because this is going to be quite visible from Route 1, I'm not an architect, but something with a little bit of mass that goes around the top where you used to have a peaked roof, I think would make it look better. You're looking at me askance, is that?
No, I remember from seeing the last time that the Route 1 facing side was duller than the
Yeah.
Concord
Yeah.
Gully facing side.
We know you're trying to adapt another design, but if you just put a little bit of thought into it, hopefully it wouldn't cost you much money. And I know we don't have the authority to get into the interior of this building or to even do much on the facade, but if you could accommodate that request, I hope it wouldn't cost much money.
Sure. I mean, I could show you the backside, what we've done so far. Previously, it was rather blank, so what we tried to do is mirror the sort of green towers that we have going through, just to sort of brighten it up, change the tone. It's still in process, in design, so we'll hopefully have something for you next month.
Great, thanks. Any other go ahead.
Yeah. Both of the letter writers brought up the subject of crosswalk. If somebody wanted to go to Shaw's and cross, I don't know, there's no crosswalk there apparently. And sidewalks, so that if they wanted to ride a bike or walk up the hill, they wouldn't be in the road.
I can address that. So the crosswalk would come under the purview of the Complete Street Committee, not this board. There is a pedestrian connection requirement in 527. It's really vague. It really just requires a 5-foot pedestrian connection with abutting properties. It doesn't say what it has to be made of. I think they have some thoughts on sidewalk. In other cases, I believe the board has let people also meet this requirement with a trail connection if they could show it meets the standard.
So how does that work? So if there's a development going in and it's very clear and apparent that a sidewalk with, with a crosswalk perhaps that goes along, you say it goes to complete streets, so.
Crosswalk.
A
would go there.
crosswalk does. What about a sidewalk?
We don't have a requirement for sidewalk. We have the 5-foot pedestrian connection. We've seen it done with
Okay.
sidewalks. It's not prescriptive. We've also seen it done with just a paved pathway, like back off the road. So we cannot require sidewalk, but let's let Jim comment, because I
Right
think they have
now,
some
I'll be honest with you,
intent.
right now, we just dead end our sidewalk right on Varney with a squiggly sidewalk. That's where we have it right now. I think the applicant, do you want to talk about this a little bit better than I will?
Hi, Matt Peters with Freeport Housing Trust. We have talked with the neighbors and have heard that they've asked the town repeatedly for a better sidewalk connection to the rest of town, and so it would be our intent to work with them and lobby the town council as part of our TIF application so that the town council can include extending the sidewalk all the way to Main Street as part of our tax increment financing proposal, so that the town will be able to provide money through that mechanism in order to build that connection. That's our intent.
So it'd be a sidewalk from this location up Varney to Route 1. Is that that's what you're,
That's what
That's
we
what you're
will,
talking
yeah, that's what we'd like to discuss with the town.
okay. And Caroline, just going back to the previous discussion about things to put on the list in the parking lot, that could be one, if there's a development, being able to make that a requirement that somebody, either the town or the developer, if the developer is creating the need for the sidewalk, the developer could be on the hook to pay for the sidewalk.
That was something kind of talked about in years past, that we do have this vague standard for the connection with the abutting properties, because it says, for example, it could be asphalt, stone dust, wood. So, yep, I think you could add that to the list of things you could talk about next month.
Yeah, and if I may, I would argue that there was a need for the sidewalk before this development too. So it's hard enough to build things, to put that desire and need on one building is disproportionately burdensome.
Len?
Mr., we'll just say Rod, also talked about, urged us to see that this project was integrated with the much-discussed trail that would, and L.L. Bean allowed some land. Can you show me where this proposed trail might be? Because it's asked that the developer
Are
be
you talking about the
cognizant.
multi-purpose trail, the one that we took
Yeah.
off?
The one that we talked to them about, yeah.
We spoke to the group, but we have not put anything on our plan. I don't think we'd have an issue with it going on the other side of the stream at all, as far as.
The residential side.
Right. I don't know if that's something we could do, but we would have no problem, something on this side. We just really, we don't want to get too close to this now, because we've got no place to put it in this area, because we're all congested with a fenced-in pond. So, we'd be all in favor, I think, of working with someone and doing it on this side, if we could find a connection point, and that's what we would offer.
I think this is also something the Complete Streets Committee is working on, the connection from Yarmouth up into Freeport
And nothing we
Village.
see here conflicts with that wish.
I mean, we don't have a requirement, again, to force somebody to participate in this, but they have had success. I know the Freeport Housing Trust has granted some easements over other properties to help make the trail connection. So I think it's good that they're
We are still
talking,
talking
but it's
with them,
not
just so you know.
something we can require, and it's up, it's a big puzzle. We have some pieces of the puzzle, but there's a lot of missing pieces. So I don't know yet if they know how it would align exactly abutting. I think they know across Varney Road over the Housing Trust property, but not to the south at this point.
Part of our review requirements touch on this, so if you could engage with the Freeport Conservation Trust or whoever has the master trail
Sure.
while we're in this process, that would be helpful.
And maybe staff could give us an update on what the status of that trail is, so we also have an idea from the town's perspective.
Sophie, is that something you could give an update on, or not really at this time?
She might have been.
It could be at another meeting.
At a future meeting.
We can do it next 2 weeks. So next meeting should work.
Okay, 3 weeks.
Anything else from me?
Just one question about the pond. Is it necessary to put a fence around it?
I usually don't put fences around ponds myself, but the developers asked me to put it around. So if you guys want to talk about why it's there, that's fine.
Yeah. The biggest reason is the insurance companies do generally request it. It's not since it's an age-restricted property, it's kind of a little bit on the is it necessarily required? We do have to usually put them in at our other properties if they aren't in already. So it is insurance. Whether or not it's included now, I'm just saying that with the way insurance has gone up and insurance companies have been even more stickler about specific items, I'm almost positive they would require it in the next 10 years to be put in, so.
I mean, it just seems out of character with the overall site. And I was walking here down Lower Main Street and across the railroad tracks and was looking, I guess it's Village View, when what appears to be a pond there, they're just like beautifully integrated with the landscape and it's almost seamlessly there. It's just, and if you put a fence around that, it would just like be too bad. It would be unfortunate.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't know what standard that was designed under either, because that was
Yeah, obviously
developed
it goes back. but-
15 years ago.
Yeah, right.
Is that a wet pond, constant elevation on it? Or is it drained after 24 hours?
I don't know, I'm not an expert in that. There are lots of cattails in it, but
What's the plan for
Probably
this one?
What's that? This is a pond that drains within 24 hours.
Yeah. It's not going to be holding water for any length of time after that 24-hour. I mean, it has to drain,
It'll drain within 24 hours of that event ending.
right. So it's not like it's going to be a beautiful site necessarily. I mean, it may be depending on what vegetation is put in, but it's not like a pond where you might see kids with little boats or
It's
something.
going to look like a meadow is what it's going to look when it's dry. It's exact, and they can mow it up to 2 times a year.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions for the applicant? The action item we have is to consider whether to accept this, to approve this at the conceptual plan phase, and that simply means that they have identified the parts of the site that are suitable for development. If there are more questions, let's ask them. If there aren't, yeah, I was just going to get to that. Is there anyone from the public this is not a public hearing, but we always invite public comment. So if anyone has any comments, would be please feel free to share them. Anyone care to make a motion on this or to discuss what to do next?
I'll do it. Be it ordered that the Freeport Project Review Board determines that based upon the site walk and the ticks and the conceptual plan dated 4/23/24, revised through 6/13/24, the review of the site inventory map, site analysis, and conceptual plan is considered complete as the board finds that the appropriate areas have been determined for development and for open space.
second that.
Any discussion about this? Okay, we don't have to do roll call vote because we are all here except the one person who is excused. All in favor of the motion is read? Any opposed? Any abstained? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And thank you to the members of the public for coming.
So that was moved by Lynn. Who seconded that? Sorry. Linda, Lynn and Jason.
Oh, I think, yeah.
I wasn't sure what,
I have 2 questions. First of all,
Can you go to the microphone?
I mean, you already
we're
you
okay.
already took action on it, but okay.
We're okay.
You can just use the microphone on the podium. It'll pick you up. You don't have to touch it.
Give us your name and address, if you will.
Yeah, we
You're
can
good.
hear you.
yes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm just curious about what you said about the traffic study that was done.
Sure.
You went through it kind of fast, and I'm not sure that I really understood what you were saying.
I'm going to give you a copy of it.
Oh, well, thank
You're
you.
welcome.
So this was a traffic study that was particularly done in connection with this project?
Without question.
Okay. And so they're considering the impact of this project on the traffic?
They are.
Okay. All right, that was one question.
That's the first 8 pages. If you want all 65, I'll
No,
give you,
no,
okay.
no, no, no.
Okay.
I'm just curious
Sure,
whether
if
that
you
was
read that, you
addressed.
should have a good
I will.
understanding.
Okay.
Okay.
The second question is, the vote that you just took, what does that mean? And does that mean that you're just saying, go ahead with this project and that there's no further review required, or is it some other process?
Can you, just because we keep minutes, can you give us your name and address?
I'm sorry, what?
Can you give us your name and address, please?
I'm Kay Sullivan, I'm from 66 Varney Road.
Okay.
Okay.
We did not, although this would please some people in the room, we did not just approve this project. This would normally be the first time they appear before us, but as a courtesy, they actually came one meeting prior to this. This was just our finding that this is a piece of property that, under certain conditions, appears to be suitable for development. That's as far as we've gotten.
Okay.
They have to be approved under two different parts of our ordinance, and there will be at least two more meetings and a public hearing.
All right.
Okay? Yeah. Next agenda item is 170 Main Street.
Intro? You want to intro?
Yeah, please.
So this is for a design review certificate. This is an old church. Years ago, it was actually a dental office. It's most recently been a single family. The applicant is applying to the code enforcement office for a duplex. A duplex does not require review by the project review board, but they have to make changes to the building facade for egress for a duplex. So they are here before you. So all you're reviewing is a design review certificate. A staff report was sent out today, an additional email answering some clarifying questions on materials and building changes. But Andrew Davis, the owner, is here, and I'll let him walk you through the proposed changes to the building. This is in Design Review District 1, and I believe it's a Class A. You did have the inventory sheet. It has been modified over time. There has been some work without permits. It is all sided in vinyl, and it does have vinyl windows today. But Andrew can kind of walk you through the changes that they're proposing.
Can I see anything? That it's all blank.
They have it in front of them, or I can put it up on the screen probably. if you'd
Let me put it on the
like.
screen, please.
Let me go to the revised one.
I wasn't sure if I was supposed to do the 12 copies in color glossy photos. I got 10 inside.
It's in keeping.
See, it's just all gone. Hold on.
Could you remove the easel? If we're going to go on the screen, that would be helpful, thanks.
Let me just get a flash drive, because I don't have this on this computer right back, and then I can screen share it with you.
See this? We can always get started on the front facade.
That's so weird.
Not 100% accurate illustration. The program I used didn't allow it to make all the fun, funky windows that we have on the front. But basically, the upper section, the steeples, none of that's being changed at all, because we're not made out of money. And let's see, down on the porches are basically being rebuilt as, or pretty close to as existing. The posts we're using are slightly different than what's there, but unless you really look, you wouldn't see it. And then the biggest, sort of the largest change is that we're looking to replace the bottom section siding, which is currently white vinyl, with a vinyl shingle in the Oceanside blue color, just to kind of break up the facade, give it a little bit of visual interest, where it's right now just a very, very massive sheet of white siding that kind of stares at you. So those are kind of the primary changes on the front-facing side. This is
I don't think so.
back next, or, well, if I can point, I don't know. So this is the side of the building that faces Chapel Street. Sort of the largest changes here, so we're seeking after-the-fact approval for this roof that's over the heat pump. And this is currently a door. Well, we're just looking to replace it with a window that's the same size as the other windows on that. There's currently a ramp and steps here. Those are going away. And then the same the vinyl shingle siding. Oh, and then we're also looking the porch, which will be the primary entrance for the downstairs apartment. It's just a 5 foot deep. I think I have it 10 feet wide. porch is in the back of the building?
On the rear of the building. So there's porches, so there's existing porches on the front, and then there'll be one on the rear of the building to access the apartment.
windows. Or no, it's just ate one of my windows. Okay, so this is the back of the building, which faces the Harrisicot. So there'll be putting a roof in, just a little shed roof here to cover a heat pump. This is the porch. There's one window upstairs. Currently it's the same size as these two. We're just replacing it with a slightly smaller window for a bathroom. Same thing with the shingling. And I think that's.
You said this rear is facing the Harrisicot.
It faces the Harrisicot parking lot. So the building,
The Harrisicot building.
Not the building.
Hotel.
we can
Hotel.
jump,
No.
we can jump to the site.
Parking lot.
Probably provide a little bit of
Of the
clarity.
Harrisicot Hotel.
Yeah,
Not-
yeah.
So this is Chapel Street over here. This is Main Street up there. And then this is the Harrisicot on both of these sides. So we have an existing just wire fence around the property to keep our dogs where we want them. And then this will just be picket fence here and here. This is the deck, which you'll see on the south side that we're asking. There's currently a deck that was built without permits in the 80s, so we're going to take it down and do one the right way. There's an existing kind of level parking area back here that we're going to pave, just 2 spaces.
For the tenant.
For the tenant, exactly. And then up front is an absolutely gargantuan, I think it's, depending on how you count, it's like 10 or 11 spaces. And I think we're planning to pave just 4 of those. We've kind of made part of that driveway as a patio now. So that's sort of the site plan. And we have, I think we have plenty of clearance on this side, 26 feet. And then this side, basically, we sit on the property line because the building was put there before. I think the building was put there before they really did much with property lines. So, or setbacks. I don't know that they were doing setbacks in 1871. And so this, so this is the south side of the building, faces the Harrisicot. Probably the most changes are on this side. So this will have a 2-story deck. This is currently a window. We're going to replace it with a door that will meld in sort of in size and scale with the existing windows up there. So it won't be jarring. And then downstairs, there's currently a window, which we're going to replace with a door. So that'll be the secondary egress for the apartment downstairs. You can see the other portion of the, that's loud. You can see the other portion of the porch, and then same thing with the siding. Sure.
Is there not, is there vegetation between that south side and the Harrisicot?
Yes, there's a line
Trees?
of maple trees. We're also trying to get some evergreens to grow. They're just taking their time. So there is
Quite a few mature trees
Yeah.
on the border and in the
Yeah.
backyard.
Yeah, the back 2
yeah.
sides are, actually, we can go back to the site plan. So this entire area is basically forested, and we've got some of the trees here. And I think there's some photos of the existing, or just the existing facades, not the property.
Reiterate what you said about that parking area that's in the front that faces Main Street?
So in the front, that's currently, that's a holdover from the dentist, or was put in, I think, during the dentist's office. It runs pretty much all the way.
There's a giant oak tree on the corner on Main Street, and there's enough room for about 10 or 11 cars that was a parking lot. This primarily is just gravel with some patio stuff in it, and we were hoping to pave about 4 spots that are closest to the house.
What were you going to do with the rest of that location?
So it'll sort of be overflow
There
parking
it is.
slash patio. We'll just have easily movable patio furniture, some planters. So if we need it for
Gardens.
additional parking, we can move that, but otherwise it'll just be more outdoor living space.
Any questions from anybody on the board?
I got one to start. So the second-story windows on the long sides are tall
They are, they're
and
the,
slender, not as represented in height, at
correct,
least,
yeah,
on these
the
drawings.
same thing, the program didn't, sure, yeah. Yeah,
So your intention is to leave them essentially?
they're going to stay as is, yeah, again, the low rent design program I used didn't have a way to make those windows, but those will be staying. And on this, whoops. Yeah, here you go.
So what then happens on the south side?
On the
where you're
south
putting
side, so on the
door
south
in?
side, the window for this deck will actually be, so the top of the windows is about 8 feet, and then there's a second window
Right.
above them. So this door will have a fixed window
Oh.
above it to match
Okay.
the rest of the, so it'll be slightly wider than the rest of the windows,
Right.
but it'll be the same height. So it'll match pretty well.
Just along those lines, I'm a little confused because the drawings show very tall windows, and you're showing windows that are not what are in the drawings.
Yes, so these if in your packets, there's photos of the existing.
That's what I'm looking at.
So this was just a limitation in the software where I was not able
We're not
to.
replacing
Okay, so you're not.
These windows will be
okay.
exactly the same. They'll have the,
in terms of their
they'll have
size.
that
Okay,
picture window.
and then
at the top.
also on the columns, the pillars as well, the towers, you're not replacing those windows at all either?
No, same thing, just limitations with the
Okay.
software not letting me put things, but nothing, basically outside of these, nothing on the,
Okay,
top section
and
is-
on the south side, the shutters are coming off?
yep. Yeah, they already took themselves off on the north side, so,
Okay.
last windstorm.
So then I was wondering, on the, I guess it would be the east side, the back side of the building? I mean, it doesn't seem like it's necessary to change the window, because you could flatten out the gable roof line.
Well, there's a bathroom going in upstairs, so there'll be a vanity under the window. And the current space from the window to the floor is only about, I think it's like 20, might not even be 24 inches. The windows are pretty close to the floor. So that's, and then there's the same actually on the, I forgot to mention that, on the south side, there's one other window. So the position of the window will stay the same, the top of it will stay aligned with the other windows, it'll just be the sill will move up about a foot. And then, yeah, so that'll, yeah, no, that one's good, so that,
Is the window not centered, or the roof, the peak of the roof, the back porch?
oh, I think that's another, yeah, it's my first go around with trying to make elevations. The window and the porch will be centered, because otherwise that would drive me crazy.
Glenn?
What was the intent of having the gray, blue shingles around the entire base of the building? Was it
Basically just to give a little bit of visual interest, to break it up, to break up just kind of the vertical mass of the building as it was.
It will help stop people asking us when we're having mass.
Yes, it's a very churchy-looking building, and so that's sort of our goal there, is just to bring it up down in scale a little bit.
Can you go, is there any other questions? Can you go back to your front elevation? So I know you have limitations with your program, but I want to just
Sure.
drill in on a couple of things. The front elevation, there's kind of a band, it would be at the top of your proposed
Right
blue.
around here.
There's a nice molding band that goes across the front and down the sides of it. That's staying?
Yes. So we're, I'm sort of checking out different available over-the-counter crown moldings, just to try to match. Well, there was a really nice crown molding, then they covered it with vinyl. Now it's rotten. But there will be basically I think I have a yeah, I have a profile of a crown molding that I'm using on the porches in the packet.
But where it's applied to the front and the sides of the building, that's staying?
Yes, there will still be a separating band
The
there.
same band that's there now? Okay, so you're going to try to match it. Now, there's a left, right, from the street, there's a left porch and a right porch. The left porch that I'm looking at has a peak to it, and yours is a
Oh,
shed
yeah,
roof.
the roof's not changing. Again, just blaming it on my inability.
Okay.
This roof will be the same as is existing with
They're
the
both
peak.
peaked. It will,
Like it is today, except
Like it
you're
is today.
replacing the columns.
Exactly.
And there's an arched, large window that sits down.
Yeah, that's not changing.
Oh, you didn't replace it with this, okay.
No, again, the software program is clearly not designed for people that live in weird
Right.
churches with funny windows.
Just to clarify for you guys, he tried to clarify it in the narrative. When he went through the photos and the description, they're really defined what he was doing. And in the staff report, we tried to note that, the vinyl around, all the windows would be vinyl, the doors would be fiberglass. He had these drawings to show you some changes, but due to the limitations of the program, a lot of it was done in the narratives on the photos. So there's a lot of things they're not changing, especially really above the blue.
Yeah, pretty much above
For the doors.
Yeah, above the blue, the only thing that's getting changed is the one door on the south side and the one window on the east side. Everything else is staying exactly as it is.
So back to what we're going to see from the street. This elevation here, you're going to rebuild both porches, but when they're done, they will be trimmed out in a fashion similar to the rest of the building.
Exactly.
And they will be, left and right will be quite similar.
Yes, yep. they
And you're
will be
putting new doors in that will match, except there's a single on the left and double on the right?
So we do have a door on the left with a nice stained glass panel. The doors on the right we're planning to leave as is for now, they're just, I don't know what style you call them. They have small windows at the top.
Are they double?
Eventually,
Yeah.
it would be nice to match all of them.
It would be really nice to match all of them. I mean, it really, this is beyond, and I want the board to understand this, this is beyond what we have authority to approve, and we couldn't deny you on the comment I have. But those three doors don't match, and none of them are at all appropriate to the building.
Oh, well, we absolutely hate the door it came with. We absolutely hate the door it came with. We have one, we bought one like a month after we bought the place to replace it and just haven't gotten around to it.
So I'm looking at the photograph, so
Yes.
when you're done, am I going to be seeing the same doors that are in the photograph?
Not identically. No, the door on the left will be replaced for sure. The door on the smaller steeple. That horrible brown thing with the bad frosted glass or whatever. The doors on the right, ideally I'll be able to find doors that match the other one, but they may stay as they are those two are less offensive, at least to my eye, than the one on the left.
Do you have a cut sheet of the door, the left in here that you're putting in?
I don't think I was able to find that. I might have a photo of it. I
Because
don't.
you would need approval to change that door as part of
Oh,
it.
okay. I can send that along. I'm pretty sure I have a photo of it somewhere. Let me know if I have. Yeah, we could take a photo of it. I'm sure I might have one somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, normally we would be seeing more detail than we're seeing here, and so if we do end up approving this project tonight, please understand, don't deviate.
Yeah.
And just to build on that, so really, this is design review district, which has a lot of very specific criterion. So obviously, changes were made before you guys owned the building that don't appear to fit design review district. So are we just thinking about the changes, period?
You can only consider the changes before you today with compatibility requirements under the ordinance, which is compatibility within A and B buildings within 500 feet, but also the structure itself, which has obviously been modified already.
Changing, yeah. Okay.
This building, I know the answer, I think, but I'll ask for the record anyway. This building is not on the National Historic Registry.
It is the only A-rated building within, I think, maybe 2,000. I think the nearest one is down on the end of Davis Street. The other nearby buildings are
Yeah, I
B-rated.
was surprised in the inventory sheet that it was still contributing because it had been modified so much over time.
Yeah, it's
The
just,
staff report.
it's still pretty much the same structure.
Another, oh, go ahead, I'm sorry, Lynn.
Number 7 in our design review criteria is relationship of facade materials. I guess they're saying that whether you use clapboard, shingles, or brick, depends on the architectural style of the building. And I guess the insertion of a gray band in a different thing, I'm going to ask the architect in the group.
Sure.
If that's in keeping with the architectural style of the building.
Yeah, I keep asking myself if I think the color part of it, which I know will get stopped in our
We
tracks.
don't regulate color,
I know.
Jason.
Maybe draws too much attention to itself in terms of like putting this weight at the bottom of this, and then kind of creates this dissonance with the top. But it's intriguing to think of the shingle as like a change in texture that kind of helps to
Yeah, I'm trying
take away from the kind of monotony of all the clapboard.
exactly.
And it's all in vinyl, so it's not like we're talking about pure sort of materials here. But yeah, if I were to encourage an outcome, it would not be to do the blue-gray, but the shingle part is I think, okay.
You do see a smaller scale, but you do see that different textures mixed on like the mallet houses. They have a lot of like shingles and clapboards and
Yeah.
combinations of things. Yeah, you can't regulate the color, you can share your thoughts, but they can.
It says the
Paint whatever they want.
facades of
I
the building.
concur on the color word we can't use, but
Yeah.
doesn't feel right to me in terms of that. And I also have a concern with the moving to shingles where you've got clapboards, and many of the adjacent buildings are all clapboards. I just personally struggle with that. I'm not an architect.
Our neighboring building is actually shingles on the upper gables of their building with clapboards below. And I
But
believe
the ones across the street and Harrisika Inn are all clapboard.
True, they are full clapboards. It is.
I understand what you're trying to go for, but
Yeah,
we're
I mean,
looking
it
at
is,
design
it's an
review
out,
standards.
it's 100% an outlier in the community anyway, architecturally. I mean, if anyone can tell me what architectural style it is, I'll give you $100 because I haven't been able to. It was designed by the minister in 1871. He drew up these plans and they did it, so it's Gothic Revival New Englander, I have no idea.
That's probably not wrong. It is a lovely building. It was a lovely building, and I know you folks bought it just a few years ago. So between it being a really lovely building and you owning it, some stuff happened to it. So anything you can do to bring some of its glory back and reintroduce some continuity to particularly the front elevation, that would be great. Are there any other questions for the applicant? Again, this is just design review.
I have, it's not so much for the applicant, it's more for, first of all, I would concur with about the color discussion, encourage. The question is that, based on the information provided, the inconsistencies between the drawings, and I'm not asking you to spend money to get an architect to, give us really sharp designs. But do we have, if we move on this based on the information as provided, will we feel confident that there will be no misinterpretation of what our understanding of the project is? Because there are inconsistencies between the windows as presented in the drawings. It's stated in the narrative. There's just, the drawings don't match a lot of what's being presented. So is it going to be tight enough for Nick to go out and say, yes, this is what was approved, or no, this is not approved?
So I have two suggestions. I think we could go through the findings together to make sure those are clear. I also think if you want to take a minute and go through the narratives with the photo, because I think really when Nick goes to inspect, going through that narrative is going to be the more accurate, with the exception of like the door cut sheet and the trim detail. So maybe we could take a minute and go through that as the board and go around the building just to make sure you think that is clear. And then the approval, just to specifically reference, with the changes, not just the application, but represent changes presented in the narrative and on the photo pages or something like that, just what you're referencing. Because I do think, there's we struggle with design review, which is why we're updating design review, and there's no hard submission requirements. But I do think it's clear for the code officer if you reference.
Well, it's also to protect, what our decision is based on, and it's also to protect you guys as well. So it's very clear that, hey, no, this is what you guys approved, as opposed to, so it's
And then
just making sure that everybody's very clear.
And I
So,
think the other question, we don't know what that front door is, so I don't know if you have a picture with you tonight, they can't just change that front door.
so I wonder if there's a way to come back at the next meeting with, take the photographs and maybe mark up stays the same, okay?
Okay, yeah,
And then
yeah.
maybe highlight just on the different side photos, this is what we're changing per the narrative or, per the sketch. So it's very clear that, like the windows on the front up high, they're not changing. So just like no work or something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, I mean, I made
Is
notes sort of along those lines.
Just to help clarify
Maybe
what
with
it
more
is.
circles.
Again, without trying to put, undue burden on you.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I feel like that is clear. He did clarify some of that in the email.
Okay,
So from an enforcement perspective,
Okay.
I feel like that's
okay.
clear, that part is clear.
Front of the building, just one quick question. There's steps. Are those concrete? Are those being going up?
Those are being replaced with composite and
Okay,
vinyls.
Okay. And new railings and all
New
that?
railings,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
So another question for you, and again, looking at design review, so the front of the building, the front facade, which is pretty clear what it is, but you're also building a deck on the second floor, which appears to be very visible from the street, which to me sort of becomes part of the front facade.
It will be visible from the street. If you look, there is a photo of I think there's a photo from the street, so you can sort of see where the existing deck is. And it's less visible than, it's less visible than it is in the drawings. Because again, the building is about 120 feet back from Main Street.
I think I'm looking at the picture, so I see the white picket fence, and then I see
And
the
then
deck.
Yeah.
But then there'll be a new deck above
And
that?
it'll be smaller, so the existing deck is, I think, 16 feet deep. The second-story deck will only be 8 feet. So consider it to be
Deep
lower
towards the
foot.
back of the building, or?
8 feet deep out from the building. Yeah, so the existing deck there is going away.
But there'll be a deck replacing that?
Yeah, there'll be a deck replacing it and one.
It'll be
and
the same
second
size?
story. Yeah, it'd actually be a little bit, be one window back, it'll be a little bit closer to the street. About 10 feet closer to the street, give or take. But that's, the deck where we're putting it will be approximately 140 feet from Main Street.
Just intellectually, I have a hard time of visualizing what that's going to look like and if it's going to take away from the rest of the building.
Yeah, I don't believe it will. And it's with the drawing, with the front elevation drawing, it is pretty jarring, but that's only if you were standing directly
Sure.
in front of the building, which I hope people don't do because that's our yard and that's weird.
And then jumping over from a site review perspective, so you are making some changes to the front parking area?
Sort of, yeah, I guess you could,
Paving.
I think they'd be considered sort of temporary changes in terms of we're putting some rolling planters, we have some patio furniture out there, basically just lots of people like to turn around in our driveway, and so
Oh, no,
we're trying to discourage that. But we're keeping it sort of temporary, so again, when we have a party or a get-together, we can.
The site review has a section on landscaping as relates to off-street parking with particular attention paid to the use of planting to break up the parking area. So it'd be good to understand if you are actually doing some work over there.
Sure.
What kind of work you're doing there.
Yeah, so they're basically rolling planters at this point, so I think they would fall under a temporary structure. We don't really have plans to. We have planted a pretty substantial garden along the back of the driveway, as was there before.
I'm just going to go back to clarity. I'm looking at page,
Page numbers on this, sorry.
yeah, that's right, and I can't find the page. It's 21 and 27, and I don't know which version I'm looking at, but it's a picture of the front of the building.
Yep.
And it has a description, front of the building. And it says, columns on both porches will be replaced with similar wooden posts, deck supports replaced with pressure-treated, decking replaced with Trex composite, new wooden steps with composite treads will be built.
Oh, there it is, yep.
Okay. And so to me, I'm not sure that that's water-clad tight because it says decks will be supported by pressure-treated. It doesn't say that the pressure-treated, does that mean that the pressure-treated is going to be exposed?
No, it'll all be clad in vinyl.
But that's the sort of clarity that,
Yeah.
if somebody's looking at this, you're saying that now, and I understand that, what your intent, but if it ends up just being exposed pressure-treated, that you could interpret this as being exposed pressure-treated.
Let me look at this because I think actually this might come under an exemption. With
So, Caroline, those are the sort of ambiguities that I'm kind of seeing, and if we can just, again, tighten that up for everybody's sake.
So probably a better way to word it would have been porches will be repaired with substantially similar appearance. If that would actually probably be a more succinct way of, they're basically going to look as similar as I can make them to where they are now.
Is this work you'll be doing yourself?
Primarily, I have a builder helping me out, but I'll be acting as GC and doing a decent portion of it myself.
To give you an understanding of why we're struggling a little bit with this, normally, most often, there would be a contractor involved, so you would have already worked out your construction details because you'd be getting charged for it.
Because I'd be giving them to my contractor.
So I can so a new project's exempt from design review certificate, handrail balusters and balustrades on existing exterior decks in or existing stairs constructed to meet applicable building codes and made of wood or composite. So I think he could fix the stairs with wood or composite, and it wouldn't trigger design. I mean, it's in here, it's part of his changes, but that's one of the new exemptions from design review.
And what caught my eye on this, though, was the columns.
So then I think if you're not, I think you could have him
Just clarify that.
clarify that. I guess it's up to the board. I think if you want to go through photo by photo and just make sure you're clear, if you're not clear, then I think you need to be very specific. You know, we don't have something that says they need to pay a professional
Right.
to put their stuff
Right,
together.
right, and that's not the intent.
The one thing, it'd be nice to get you out of here tonight if we can. There are some blanks. The one detail that is not clear to me is what the front door is going to look like.
Yes, and I can provide, I was actually trying to see if I had a photo of.
And are you going to be able, do you think you're going to be able to replace both front door, both the door openings at both porches?
A little bit of an open question, just in terms of, I mean, that double door on the double door on the larger porch is going to be an expensive, that's an expensive door, even for a very basic one, just because it's.
Do both doors, where do they go? I mean, when you walk in,
Well, the door to the left is the entrance to our primary residence. The door to the
Okay.
right is sort of a secondary entrance to the downstairs area.
and you've got the ground floor, or
We're upstairs.
you're upstairs, so you would be using which door every day for your?
Primary door would be the door on the left. The doors on the right are kind of, they will be, once we finish a portion of the downstairs area, will sort of be part of our space as well, so they'll get used more.
When are you hoping to get started on this?
Soon, I hope, yeah.
Yeah, he had already submitted for a permit. It got flagged when he applied for the changes for the duplex. So he has a,
Yeah, so the porches have been started because those were a repair. Those were a repair and not subject to design review. They're just included.
The larger porch fell apart.
Yeah, basically, we stepped through it.
That's the left, one on the left or the right?
The bigger steeple.
That's one on the right
porch
from
on
the street.
right. So, yeah,
Yeah, there's a picture, you can see it from the side,
Yeah.
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 the porch.
Yeah, you can sort of see the temporary post that we put in there. But that was, as it was explained to me, that didn't fall under design review because it was a repair of an existing structure with substantially similar materials.
So do the doors that show in the elevation, is that what you intend to?
No, those were kind of the stock. They give you like 6 options for doors.
There's a photo further on that gives you a better picture of what's there, and only the one on the left you're proposing to change at this point. Does anyone else have any, when you folks have no further questions, I have a suggested path forward.
Let me see.
That's what I'm interested in.
I'm seeing if I can find this door that we bought.
Did you ask us a question?
Are there any more questions? So here, I have a suggested path forward, and that is to approve this tonight with, unless I'm missing something,
Sorry.
we've got some general concerns about just not crisp, clear information on every detail, but particularly this left front door under your short steeple. My suggestion is that we approve this subject to you coming back, you coming to Caroline, show her that door. We would give her the authority to approve it if she feels like it's within the rhythm of the building, and if not, she can call me, and if we can't decide, then you got to come back for another meeting. But that kind of gets you out here if you do that. But also, if the rest of the board's comfortable with this, you are still going to be bound to conform to everything you've represented in this application, and you're going to have the code enforcement officer monitoring it as you proceed.
Yep.
So if you want to go that route, I'd just like to get a little verbal clarification on what that style of that front door is. So
Sure, yeah, I'm trying to find a
Is it a
photo
full
of it.
glass, a half glass, a quarter glass? details?
Three-quarter glass with a leaded insert.
What's a,
It's like it's sort of like stained glass, but it's all, or does it have color? Is there color in the glass? I can't even remember. We bought it a long time ago. It's buried underneath some sheets of plywood.
Stained glass styling.
Yeah.
Some of it's beveled. If there's color, it's very vague.
I'm trying to find a
It's
photo of the
mostly
darn
clear.
thing.
I mean, we don't get into the, I'm not worried about the
Yeah.
color, because we don't get into the
no, but this is about massing mostly.
color. So if they come back with a three-quarter glass door for staff review.
Three-quarter means it's wood, it's glass with
Three-quarters
mullions
glass.
up
Three-quarters of the
above.
way down.
I think it's three-quarter, yeah. I was hoping I
Well,
could find a
it
photo
sure would
of
be
it.
nice
Kind of
to,
like the other one.
not this one.
No, but that's like a three-quarter, same.
Yeah.
Yes, that's the
Yeah,
It might be
the
half.
rental.
yeah.
Dang, I wish I could find the photo of
Now,
it.
the board may not be, the board may want you to come back, but that would
Okay.
be my proposal.
Yeah, I was hoping I,
This is a big job.
Yeah, it's
yep.
kind of in rough shape.
How does the board feel about proceeding in that fashion versus having them come back at the next meeting?
I think that's fine.
Yeah, I can certainly.
Jason says it feels it's okay.
Yeah, we have a lot of notes that will be in the minutes that can also be used as a reference point.
Yeah, and as Caroline said, their narrative does answer a lot of this stuff. Any further thoughts, or does someone care to make a motion? I'll make the motion, and you folks can decide whether you want to vote for it or not. So from the printed motion, I'm going to add something at the end, beyond the printed motion from Caroline. I'll add a subpart 3. Be it ordered that the Freeport Project Review Board approve the printed findings of fact and design review certificate for Andrew and Megan Davis for exterior alterations of 170 Main Street, Tax Assessor Map 13, Lot 10, to be substantially as proposed, with the substantial submission dated 5/15/2024, finding that it meets the standards of the Freeport Design Review Ordinance with the following conditions of approval. 1, this approval incorporates by reference all supporting plans that amend the previously approved plans submitted by the applicant and their representatives at Project Review Board meetings and hearings on the subject application, to the extent they're not in conflict with other stated conditions. 2, prior to the start of construction, applicant obtained applicable permits from the code enforcement officer. 3, and I'm adding this for the board's consideration, prior to start of construction, applicant should present town planner with a cut sheet for the proposed door on the left. That would be the north access on the street elevation.
Could I ask a question?
Yeah.
Okay, so if they give us the look of the left door, is there any, does it have to, in balance? If you found money and you decided to do the door on the big tower, is there anything that says we want them to be compatible or at least same? In other words, whatever you find, hopefully it can be found in the double, because if ultimately you change it, the right-hand one, it should be compatible, I would think, in materials and color and windows and, does that make sense?
The doors on the right are quite nondescript.
Yeah, they're
And they're-
pretty, they'll match just about anything, or meld with anyway.
And they're not proposing any changes there, so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we just want to replace
Yeah.
the really ugly door for starters.
I have a question also. Are you finished?
I'm done.
Maybe I just didn't see this, but there's a chimney on the north side.
Oh, right.
It says, so chimney will be removed, okay.
Well, yeah.
I just read
Yeah.
that now, so that's,
Yeah.
your other
I didn't
pictures
think
don't show
anybody
it.
would
and I
fight me
was
too much on
wondering-
that,
Okay.
on pulling down the cinder block chimney.
So you have a motion, but you don't have a second. So Ford, I feel like your motion's a little, your third condition.
Didn't give you enough guidance.
Yes, Ford,
Yeah.
because it just says to submit something. So I feel like you could give me any door,
So yes, I thought of that after I
or maybe.
after I put a period on that
cut sheet of
sentence.
the door for review as
Yeah. The,
discussed at the meeting or something. I
so
don't know.
my third proposed, my revised item 3 on that motion would be the prior to start of construction, applicant shall present to town planner the cut sheet for the proposed door on the north access of the street elevation, and the town planner has to find that that is consistent with, in appearance with the other door and with the overall appearance of the building. And if,
A
in
lot of pressure on the town planner.
you-
or
but
call me.
Is the town planner okay with that?
the town
She's
planner.
done on July
She
1st.
won't be
But I
working.
really want to stress, I mean, think, like, take the chimney being taken down, all of that stuff normally would be all in front of us, would understand all that.
Yeah.
This is only design review, but you please don't deviate.
Sure.
Come back to us if there's anything else that's going to be like that.
I
Are you
would
comfortable with, you have enough guidance?
Sure.
Okay.
I would second that.
Any discussion from the board? All in favor of the motion with my addition? Opposed? Abstain? Okay, thank you.
Detail.
So that was one opposed, Sharon.
Yep.
It's just too many misses.
Okay, good luck. Thank you.
Yeah.
I hope you find money to have 3 doors on the front of that building that match.
The two signs aren't.
Thank you.
the same.
We got a really good deal on the first ones.
Did I miss, Cedar Haven didn't get their stuff together.
They were tabled.
We were waiting for some more information
Right.
on Cedar Haven, so it
That was
seems
the
like
last I
a-
heard. Okay.
Right. Right.
I don't know how many town project review boards have their town manager hanging out on a nice summer night.
Should I bring the
It's cool. Well,
We're
no,
good.
not really.
section and then back tomorrow?
Oh, I can take it right now.
Supposed to take it to finance or something.
Thank you.
So, I'm sorry, but just before we close, so who is going to be fulfilling the town planner position after July 1st?
You'll have me until we have a replacement.
Okay.
Oh, maybe they could have me.
Eh. I'll help out too.
We want her.
We gave, you weren't here, we gave a summary of the changes going on with staffing in the planning department and Brett coming on board.
Am I on that interview committee? Yeah, so nothing's, good. We're going to get a very good person, or Caroline's here for a long while.
I hope so.
Yeah, she wants a really good person.
Yeah, well, you're nice, thank you for coming to our meeting, so.
I used to do this one in my other job. It's where all the fun happens.
Yeah, you're right. Tonight was fun, wasn't it? Thank you, microphone's off.
We're not done.
Oh, yeah, oh, yeah. Is there anything else?
So
Any other
Last
mis-
item here.
you have an item 5. So we talked about this at the last meeting, but when we talked about how under state law, municipality, the municipal reviewing authority can make a finding for 4 criteria like stormwater, drainage, a couple other things, that if your site plan ordinance addresses those, multifamily can be exempt from subdivision review and just go through site plan review. So the planning board has been looking at this. Because we split duties, you guys review the actual subdivision applications. Under state law, you are the municipal reviewing authority who, if you read it literally as written, would need to be the board to make that finding, even though when you make that finding, there's changes that need to be made to the zoning ordinance because we have so many references to multifamily and subdivision. So it kind of goes together. It's a change from our original legal guidance, so I just wanted to give you a heads up. I know you guys were supportive of the change because we talked about it at the last meeting, but at some point, when we're ready to align it and time it with the planning board, I will be bringing that back to you to consider making that finding that the few criteria that has to be found to be sufficient is met. And when you do that, then the planning board will make the changes, and then multifamily wouldn't come through subdivision, they would just come through site plan review. If that makes sense.
What if there's multifamily buildings in a site?
So we had talked about that with legal guidance. There's some kind of conflicting, the way the state law is written. There's like an S in one place, but not an S in the other place. And so you do have the ability to make a specific finding that when multifamily is in one structure on a property, that criteria is met, which our attorney says we can do and would follow a strict reading of state law. So if you had someone come with multiple buildings, like project next door or the one on Desert Road, they would still have to go through subdivision review.
When I'm just trying to think forward here. So the application going up Route 1, there was a multifamily, and we had the big discussion about the driveway and the electrical lights and everything. So that
is
had
not- That's not multifamily, because multifamily is 3 or more units in a single structure.
Okay.
You're talking about
So
a
it's not a
separate-
duplex type thing, is it?
Correct, a whole
Okay,
bunch of
I-
duplexes is not multifamily.
Went over my head, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good question.
Anything else? May we have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
All in favor? Opposed?
No.
Okay.